Hello. Today we're going to cover a range of subjects concerning the astrological Navaratna, and I'd like to start off by giving some quotes from this still the best book I've ever read in my life, and I read it 30 years ago and many times since. It's called The Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. And there's a chapter in there that got my deep interest many years ago, many decades ago now I should say, called Outwitting the Stars. And that's a concept that most people aren't familiar with, but essentially we have a massive amount of good and bad karma from past lives, and we want a way to mitigate or nullify some of the highs and lows of that karma, and we want to use any passive medium we can, as well as our active willpower, to make our life more fun and full of joy. So with that in mind, about 30 years ago, a bit over that now, I took a keen interest in astrological Ayurvedic bangles because I considered them, my research indicated that they were the most holistic, complete mechanism for lessening the inconvenience and suffering in the mind and body. And so since then I've just been doing shall we just say, a busload of research. I'll start off with a quote from the Autobiography of a Yogi, and it's quoted from Swami Sri Yukteswar, written by Paramahansa Yogananda. And he says, "It is only when a traveler has reached his goal that he is justified in discarding his maps. During the journey, he takes advantage of any convenient shortcut." I almost feel like I should read that 5 times because a lot of people hear it and it just doesn't sink in. But essentially, what he's saying is there are other mechanisms that can deflect our experience of negative karma beyond meditation, which is probably the key, best technique of them all. And so astrological bangles, to most observers, are, shall we say, frivolous addendums to people's jewelry closet, and that's just not what they are. An astrological bangle has 9 different gemstones in it, and let's go deeper into that. Let's look at what a crystal does. Now, we've hopefully heard of a crystal radio. If you haven't, then you really don't know much about science. A crystal radio or a crystal receiver in a crystal radio was the first radio that was ever created. Jagadish Chandra Bose, or I should say Sir Jagadish Chandra Bose, who was resident of Calcutta in India, filed the first patent in 1901, and he was an unbelievably broad-minded genius of scientific repute, and who got very little credit for his discoveries. And then it was Guglielmo Marconi came along later and got the credit for the radio. But Jagadish Chandra Bose discovered that a crystal could pick up radio frequencies, and that no battery was required to amplify its influence. Now, in a crystal radio, you don't need a battery. That's really quite amazing because it shows the resonance of the crystal to the radio wave. A radio wave comes through, the crystal resonates to it and emanates its signature, be it someone's voice or a song or whatever. And that actual crystal radio doesn't need a battery for its circuitry. The battery was included to create amplitude, to create volume increase. And that is a very profound discovery, because when you wear a large crystal, a colored crystal, on your arm, it touches your physical body, which then permeates to your electrical body, which you could consider a battery, and it interacts with your electrical body. So your electrical body is where the karma is held. Your chakras control the electrical body, according to the rishis. Your karmic residue is resident in your chakras. And when you resonate with a planetary position because of your past karma, the karma's ripe for fruition. if you put a crystal in between the planetary radiations and your electrical body, you get a very different electromagnetic resonation. When you get a different electromagnetic resonation, you can improve your preponderance for beneficial karma. And let me put it to you another way. You put a fuse in an electrical circuit, say in your breaker panel in your house, your fuse box. What does that do? That stops the modulation of extremes for the electrical current going through that circuit in your house. You create a balanced, reliable, well-patterned electrical current to travel down that circuit without any extremes, without it blowing a fuse, as it were. And so, consequently, if you look at a crystal on the human body, which is very bio-friendly, you can improve your modulation for karmic receptivity. You can add and supplement and improve your assimilation of benign electromagnetic frequency, and you can mitigate, as I said already, nullify negative extremes. Now, having said that, I could go into the evidence of that, but astrogems.com has been doing this for 30 years, doing a lot of research, taking a very keen interest in what works. We use our customers as our laboratory. Consciousness measures consciousness. An individual wears something and notices their personality change. They might get more confidence. They might get more mental clarity. They might get more improved happening in their life directly after putting on a Navaratna. And that is something we take a passionately keen interest in. Now, a lot of Navaratnas out there are made so badly, so inferiorly, that, well, they just don't work. And I want to get into why and how. So having given that very, very basic foundation of logic to explain the importance of Navaratnas, I'd like to get into one that was sent to us recently that was made in India. So I have on the table in front of me, I've laid it out so that we can discuss it. This is a bangle sent to us from a fellow, we'll call him Sanjay for privacy reasons. It's not his real name. Sanjay had his bangle made in India, and a lot of people use our service and then go and get their bangles made somewhere else, and then they realize they just don't seem to be working, and so they contact us and say, can we make any improvements? So obviously I've traveled around the world many times, visiting mines, purchasing large parcels of gemstones that have to be identified correctly, and I'm always looking for as big a gemstone or crystal material as possible with the right quality, flawlessness, so that we can make high quality crystals. For instance, in the crystal radio, they realized very quickly that natural crystals were quite inferior at resonating with the radio waves, so they moved over to laboratory grown crystals which were grown in a controlled environment and worked perfectly for sonar, microphones, cameras, etc. But we'll get into that a little bit later. So Sanjay's bangle fell apart. It wasn't made. I liken our bangle to a bicycle chain. It has to be durable enough to last a lifetime, whether the person's doing judo, swimming, racquetball, rock climbing, etc. It has to be made really with great strength and longevity. So I think his fell apart within the first 6 months. As an example, you can see the linkage here, how thin it is. We'll put some photos in the video. And there's a dramatic difference in strength and thickness of the silver or gold that we use. Let's go piece by piece, gem by gem in the Navaratna. The first stone he got was a ruby, and that really is I would call it red corundum. It's definitely not a ruby. It's not transparent. You cannot see through it. It's not glass-like in its red color. It's absolute garbage. I would pay $1 a carat for it if I saw it at a dealer. close to the source. I call it road-based ruby. And if you look at it with a loop, and we only use a 60 power loop when we look at our gemstones, you would see easily 1,000 inclusions in it. And that's why it's so opaque, and it's absolute rubbish. Our rubies are completely transparent. Now, if you want a natural ruby that's unheated, untreated, unglass filled, that's true pigeon blood red color, think $25,000 a carat. Don't fool yourself. If you see something less than that, it's been enhanced, it's been treated, and it doesn't. I don't care what the gem dealer says. They are so rare that you have to have a reputable certificate, not one of these. So many gems are sold with certificates that aren't worth the paper they're printed on. I was talking to a gemologist in Thailand about 25 years ago. This girl really knew her stuff. She knew sapphires backwards, ruby being a red sapphire. And I said to her, in my opinion, 99% of all rubies are heat treated. And she looked at me pityingly, like I just said a really silly comment. And she said, try thinking 99.9% of all rubies are heat treated. And that was before the massive ruby finds in Madagascar were discovered, which are all glass filled and heat treated. Not all glass filled, but all heat treated to enhance the color. It changes the atomic lattice. Now, when you heat a crystal, you're essentially bending that alignment of perfect laser-like geometrical pattern inside the geometrical lattice. That's what makes a crystal a crystal. The molecules align in a geometrical pattern. That doesn't occur in glass or wood or synthetics that are not grown as crystals. Having said that, his ruby was a complete waste of time, sunstone gone. The next stone he had in his Navaratna was an emerald. Fracture filled, color enhanced, cannot see through it, easily would have several thousand inclusions in it, and completely useless as a astrological gemstone. To the eye it's attractive. Oh, it's a nice green color, but it's not a crystal. It's not a unified crystal. It's like a microcrystalline or polycrystalline material with thousands of fractures in it, and a lot of them not visible to the naked eye, but the overall effect is highly visible under magnification. The next stone is a pearl. It's a freshwater pearl, perfectly round. I'll tell you a story. Many years ago, I was in India, and this gem dealer was showing me a bag of pearls. I hadn't asked to see them. I don't get my pearls from India. And they're all round, and they're all shiny, just like this. Beautiful luster, great nacre. I obviously knew what they were, and he was telling me that they were perfect pearls, and the price was quite reasonable, and all this jazz. So I just took one without consulting and asking him, and I put it on the ground, and there's a rock nearby. I quickly picked up my hand and smashed it with the rock, and he was a bit startled. Here I am smashing his merchandise. And there were 3 other Indians in the room, also pretty startled. I picked up the shattered pieces of pearl, and I handed them to him. And I said, look. And he looked at it, and he said, what? And I said, look closely. And he looked at it, and he said, what? I said, it's a mother-of-pearl bead that's perfectly round, that's been coated in nacre, and it looks like a perfect pearl, but in fact you've got less than a millimeter of pearl material surrounding a bead made of a shell, basically, the mother-of-pearl shell. And then he realized, and he could see the difference between the thin skin on the outside of the pearl and the mother-of-pearl on the inside. Now, I've seen these pearls being worn down, and people still think they're solid pearl. And so that pearl really isn't a pearl. It's hardly any better than a plastic bead, really. The next gemstone is Chrysoberyl cat's eye. Now, I used to travel to India to buy my Chrysoberyl cat's eyes. The 5 mines in Orissa have all closed down. The supplies run out. I'm not surprised by this. Funny enough, and the gem dealer Sanjay bought from was a genuine, honest gem dealer. He didn't falsify the identity of any of these stones. This cat's eye has 5 large cracks in it that almost go all the way through it. When you have a large crack in a gemstone, you might as well call it half that weight. And it is a genuine Christ-Spiral cat's eye, but it's so flawed that it's not receptive to resonant radiations that it needs to be. The next stone is a red coral. That is unbelievably good quality fake red coral being manufactured in India. It's stunningly well made. I've really seen their improvements over the years as they continue and refine their skills in manufacturing it. It's a ceramic glass resin. It has the lines like red coral at the right distance apart. The ways you can tell, sometimes there might be an air bubble in there, which might look like a wormhole, and on the inside it's highly polished. That's one way. Another way is an acid test. It doesn't respond to acid like a calcium carbonate would. That is red coral, or Corellum rubrum, or Corellum japonicum. I'll tell you a story. I was at a very reputable gem dealer who had a closeout lot in a major city in the United States, a Cambodian lady with her family, and she had this red coral, and I pulled out my loupe, and she ridiculed me for pulling out my loupe to look at red coral. I mean, it's red coral, you can see what it is. So I looked at it closely, and I studied some pieces, and some were natural red coral. Within the parcel was pieces of red coral, and where they'd been cut at the end, you could see a reorientation of the growth lines of the coral, and it showed that it was in a liquid state once and been snipped. And it kind of looked like a candy in a sense. That same phenomenon happens with sugar candies. And I pointed out to them that it was manufactured coral, and they were, first of all, they didn't believe me. Then I showed them why, and then they were shocked and in disbelief because a very reputable gem dealer had sold it to them. And they didn't know. That's commonly the case with red coral. I've had friends bring back red coral from mostly India and say, look, I've got all this red coral, would you like to buy it? And I get a cigarette lighter on and it burns like plastic, and they feel a little bit shortchanged, shall we say. The next stone is a zircon, not a white sapphire. It was sold as a zircon. It's a natural zircon. It's a soft stone, doesn't have much potency, definitely not a good Venus stone. The thing with zircon is they have to heat treat them to bring them into a white color most of the time. And there's no evidence of heat treatment. You can get natural white zircon, but the great majority, like topaz, are heat treated to make them that color. And again, when you superheat a crystal, you bend the molecular lattice, it's no longer a crystal, dead, no resonance, no receptivity to planetary radiations in that resonant frequency manner, waste of time. The next stone is hessnite garnet, and it's a beautiful one. I haven't tested it. It could be a spessartite. They're very similar in refractive index. He got a good stone with the hessnite garnet, and I'm happy about that. The blue sapphire, when it took it out of its setting, it's hardly got any blue in it, just the slightest tinge. Doesn't look as blue when you set it. Not a bad gem. It's been heat treated, so the color has been enhanced. Not as badly heat treated, possibly, though it's hard to tell, as the yellow sapphire. It's got a lot of telltale heat treatment inclusions in it, and a nice color yellow sapphire, totally heated again. So basically what you have is a complete dud. The whole Navaratna is, except for the hessenites, and the red coral is, I believe, natural. I need to study it some more, but it's too small. It's under 4 carats, and red coral should always be over 4 carats. Just like a diamond can be 1.5 carats to work. It doesn't have to be 2. Generally, all it weighs over 2 throughout, but those are the 2 anomalies that need to be considered. As an example, our pearls, which we smash and test and all that stuff, well under $100, 3 times the size. And we don't sell small gem bangles. Gems have limitations. If you want them to work, if they want them to actually mitigate your karma, you have to do high quality, pure crystals, strong color, wide surface contact area, and good size. And the problem with this bangle, and we'll put a photo in the video, the gems hardly touch the skin anyway. It's so badly designed. People who make Navaratnas don't understand the science, haven't done the research. They look like jewelry, but they're not instruments of karmic mitigation. So, having discussed that, also this bangle, like many of them, is worn with a chain and hook. This system was common in the 1930s, and before the advent of spring technology. And I give an example. Our spring technology stretches. So if the biceps flex, the bangle stays comfortable, and it's ergonomically designed. It's custom made to the person's arm size, easy to take out a spring, easy to change it. We've been doing the system for 30 years. People love it. Comfortable. When you look at the stone sizes that we put in a bangle versus Sanjay's bangle, it's dramatically different. Our gems are generally always 2 to 3 times larger. For instance, if you're not going to put in a Venus stone for the diamond, then put in a large, unheated, flawless white gemstone. A lot of people use white sapphire. The problem with that is the large number of them are heat treated and don't necessarily show evidence of it. And consequently, we don't favor selling white sapphires. They're also very cost prohibitive. And we like the Goshenite, which is half a point on the Mohs scale, less hard, but you can get them 5 times bigger for a tenth of the cost. So, okay, having said that, I'd just like to talk about laboratory-grown crystals. Now, a laboratory-grown crystal is a process that uses the laws of physics from Mother Nature, using materials that are naturally contributed from the earth and put into a perfect environment that grows the crystal. If you get a tomato seed and you put it in a greenhouse and you control the soil, or organic soil, and the water supply, and keep the pests away, you get a perfect tomato. You get an absolutely perfect tomato. Well, it's a laboratory-grown tomato. You created a laboratory environment for perfection of growing that tomato. It's the same with a crystal. Man doesn't make these crystals. They grow using the laws of physics or Mother Nature. Completely different from a synthetic, which is generally always a chemical melt mix, does not create an external crystal structure, do not grow as crystals, and are 99% of all synthetics. They're far more expensive because they take time to grow and a lot of energy, are the laboratory-grown crystals. Now, the reason why we promote them is our customers can tell the difference. We've had many customers try natural emeralds versus large laboratory-grown crystals. They want to return the naturals and keep the lab-grown. They can feel the difference. So AstroGem's got into massive disrepute with a lot of organizations and a lot of gem dealers who are trying to make far more money on an individual crystal sale by selling a natural emerald that's got a lot of, shall we say, fractures and inclusions that are masked by the refractively similar resins that fill the cracks of those emeralds. And we have a clear conscience. We sell our lab-grown emerald material for, I think it's $46 a carat. And if I was to take this to a jewelry store and say I've got this emerald cluster, they would not think that was lab-grown. They would think that was a natural emerald cluster, and they'd be in awe of its depth of color. You can grow lab-grown emeralds that look like they're natural, but we don't purchase those. We do the AAA grade, lab-grown green. We love laboratory-grown crystals if they're grown perfectly. There's different ways of growing crystals. Some are not patterned on the same process as Mother Nature, so we follow the contours of the hexagonal lab-grown emerald crystal, etc. But above all, we give our customers a choice. If they want to pay for a natural emerald, we'll sell them one. But when they see the quality difference and can compare apples and oranges, they pretty much always go for a larger lab-grown. Now, this gentleman from India, Sanjay, the price he paid for this bangle was less than what we would have sold our bangles for, but if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. You get what you pay for. We don't think it was worth the exercise to get that bangle. I've seen a lot of Navaratnas made in India. I've never seen a good one. I did see one that was impressive, but the gentleman paid a lot for it. By and large, I don't buy my gemstones in India. I go to other countries. I used to go to India to buy Christopher cat's eyes. India has a fantastic jewelry industry, gem cutting industry, but they tend to go for the lower quality gemstones in India. The diamond industry being quite different to that, but I'm just talking about the colored stone market. So, having said that, look at that laboratory-grown quartz. Perfect crystal. If you're buying gemstones from a gem dealer who does not have a polariscope, stereo microscope, a refractometer, the gem testing instruments, question whether they would understand whether they're buying the correct gemstones from the previous person. That's a big indicator of whether they're serious gemologists or not. So I meant to quote more information from the Autobiography of a Yogi, and I will do so now just to bring it up. I cannot say enough how important this book has been in my life in the study of gemstones and other subjects. Yogananda wrote a quote from Sri Teshwar again where he says, "Just as a house can be fitted with a copper rod to absorb the shock of lightning, so the bodily temple can be benefited by various protective measures." This problem received attention from our rishis. They found helpful not only a combination of metals, and that's why we make our spring links out of pure silver and pure copper or pure gold. The reason for that is it's very bio-friendly, very absorbing of static and excess and electrical energy in the body. Most effective of all are faultless jewels of not less than 2 carats. Crystals only start working at 2 carats, and that's if they're good color, wide surface contact, and the other indicators I've given. But above all, why stop at 2 carats when you can get gems at 10 carats and you're buying them from someone who specializes in that subject and sells them at a low price because we sell all 9 gems. We're not trying to make money on one individual gem and building it up. People come to us to purchase Navaratna's astrological jewelry. We don't search for them. We don't try to cater to every whim. We do what we do based on our integrity, and we want the karma of creating them. We want to mitigate other people's karma because that comes back to us. So you help the God in others, that's our philosophy. A little known fact is that the proper jewels, metals, or plant preparations are valueless unless the required weight is secured, unless these remedial agents are worn next to the skin. Again, so many Navaratnas I see not made by us barely have the gem touching the skin. They seem to think that the tiny tip of the apex of the back of the gem touching the skin is enough. I wish that was true. You need a wide surface contact. We've experimented extensively with this, making many different designs of bangles that you can see on AstroGems. The people that report the feedback are the people who have the wide skin contact. People who, for some cosmetic jewelry purpose, want it to look beautiful with just the tip of the gem touching the skin, go, "Oh, I love it, it's beautiful," but they don't notice a shift in their karmic pattern. They don't notice a change in their psychology. They don't notice the bangle doing its job. So we just don't like to make it that way. We're not interested in making jewelry, really. We're interested in making instruments that are durable, strong, and effective. And that's probably it for now. Thanks so much for laboring this long in the video to watch it. Please go to astrogems.com to study up more on the subject. And if you haven't read this amazing book, please do so. Autobiography of a Yogi. Thank you very much.